Good morning, everyone. I'm Renee Newton, and my research proposal is on the ethical dilemma in 3D printing. How I got started on this, I'm a little bit of a techie. That's what I do for a living. And I was reading an article online, and I saw this thing on the side, the advertising goes by, and it says, you can get Martha Stewart's dishes, download the design, and print them yourself. And I thought, how do you print a dish? So I started looking more at this capability, so that's where we got started. 3D printing, or three-dimensional printing, additive manufacturing, has been around for 30 years. They use it for prototyping. So you make something small scale and you can make it large scale, right? So it's been around 30 years, but now it's more of a new innovation because it's down to the consumer level. So you've got people that can buy a printer for under $500 and get this thing going where you can make things yourself. It's recently exploding on the market. I read an article in this April that the New York City Expo and Conference, they had 12,000 people there, and this is just one of many conferences around the world, on a 10,000 square foot conference area. So it's growing crazy, like crazy. I want to examine that if there needs to be standards in place, and what's the legal and ethical use of these printers. And this is a non-experimental research program. So I'm going to use cases, do data mining, and a personal interview. I'm going to address the moral and ethical dilemmas in 4 areas, and I'll talk about those, and find a solution to influence social and policy change as needed. So what is 3D printing? So it's a mechanical device, looks a lot like a printer. That can be small scale to your desk, or they can be huge. It reads a CAD drawing or a scanned-in image, and then it slices it like salami so that it can make a three-dimensional piece, right? So it's physically building it layer by layer, and it can use all kinds of polymers, plastics, sugar, because you can build food, and other kinds of chemicals, and metal and sandstone. And then it fuses those layers together, and you have a physical thing come out of this thing. So you can make what you can imagine. You're only limited to the size of your printer, and you don't even have to own the printer. So there's a lot of sites like Thingiverse where you go there and you manipulate somebody else's design to your own liking, and then you have them print it and they can send it to you. People have made very custom and intricate designs. You've got musical instruments, you've got toys and figurines, kitchen utensils, home decor, jewelry, art, and then you get into food, like I talked about, including for NASA, not just sugar things. And bikes, automobiles. I saw a 12,000 square foot mansion built out of plastic. And so it's redesigning manufacturing for design, construction too. And then you get into weapons and body parts. Yes, body parts. So tracheas, implants, prosthetics. And now you begin to see the good and the bad potential of such a technology. Okay, so my research questions, or what are the potential legal and ethical issues that can be in 3D printing? And what are the standards that are set in place? What standards need to be made so that you have a proper use of this technology, but you also have success? Because I want the industry to flourish, but I don't want it to just go crazy like it's going. And what are the social and economic impacts if we don't answer the second question? My problem statement is that standards must be set in place and other measures taken to ensure a proper, safe, and legal ethical use of this innovation. So, because it's going to affect the global economy and the communities. Okay, so I wanted to address the epistemology because it's important to this. If you're going to judge ethics, where do you come from? So we all learn that justified belief is epistemology, right? That big word that we have a hard time saying. Research traditions for this are the body of knowledge of behavioral ethics and ethic theories, and particularly normative ethics. They tell us that what we ought to do or what's best to do in a given situation. And then I lean towards common morality, which says that we grow up in a group, in a culture, with an understanding what's moral. So in our country, it's the Judeo-Christian ethics that built this Constitution and the laws that we go by, right? And so that's where my bent is. So that's a standard of morality and conduct, but then you go a level deeper and you have your worldview. My worldview is Christian theism, and I believe that there's one standard for morality. Now that goes down to the heart level, right? And so you can't really fairly judge ethics if you have no right and wrong. Moral absolutism is gone. A lot of people are saying, well, there's, what your truth is not my truth. But if you don't have a standard, how do you judge what's ethical and moral, right? So I'm going to go by universal standards and business and law standards in this country and the ones that I talk about. So in my literature review, I narrowed it down to 4 areas. There's intellectual property issues. You've got patent infringements and all kinds of legal issues going on. You have health and safety issues. Now, you remember years ago, we started drinking our water bottles and they emitted BPA, right? And people were getting sick from BPA. Well, a lot of these cheaper plastics emit BPA. And they also emit, the printer itself will emit particles into the air. So you're breathing particle level stuff into your lungs. And then if you're doing, like some printers are doing a pool part for a pool, and then they are making food on the same printer, so you got bacteria issues. And then you have potential security and terror threats. Not only can you make your own guns now, but if you're not legally supposed to be able, and I'm not against arms, I believe in the right to bear arms, but I don't think it's good that anybody can build a gun, right, or a weapon. And then you also have drug issues. Well, they have built these polymers where you can stick certain chemicals in there and it becomes a catalyst. You eat the polymer and it becomes a new drug reality for people. And then you have economic impact. So this is a $4.1 billion industry. You don't hear about it much, but it's growing like crazy. And you can do manufacturing faster, and you can do it with less people. So that's where you affect an economy. It's also being pushed in education. In the United States, the last science fair that Obama had, he had several 3D companies represented who were giving money to this. And they're pushing it all the way from elementary up. So your 5-year-old may be breathing these particles. So here's my proposed methodology. I'm doing non-experimental research, and I want to gain insight by reading the documentation, so we start with the literature, right? You get developed grounded theory when you find out more about what's going on in the industry, and then you can do future studies. This is an obtrusive observation. I'm going to interview a company locally, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'm also going to do case studies and compare those answers to the questions based on interviews and data that's out there. So it's EDIC data, that is, it's outsider. I'm not inside to the 3D printing industry. And it's limited coding in that I'm just going to look at data for those 4 areas. This is going to be also using existing cases and public opinion. You can gain some insight from the social media by looking at, well, what do people think? What's their opinion out there? And then hopefully discover trends and solutions. Okay, so the anticipated results. Some things are aptly addressed. It's very easy to address these issues. And some are not. They're global. So you're going to always have IP, which is intellectual property theft. You're going to always have weapon violence, and you're going to have profit over people, right? But some of these can be addressed by proper laws and constitutional jurisdiction against those, so that you have consequences to those laws, guidelines, and protections. There's a simple awareness of the issues that I can get if I can just get somebody to read it, right? And to help rethink your approach. Then there's also a biblical remedy for this, for the theft issue. And the Bible talks in Ephesians, Paul says, if you put off your old man, renew the spirit of your mind, and put on the new man, then you can be changed, right? But that's a change of the heart. And so in the Bible it talks about, in Ephesians, steal no longer, do good works with your hands, give to the needy. So it can be a change, but that's a personal change level. There's other existing solutions that just need to be put out industry-wide. I talked about education. This is a picture of the Kimpo XYZ printing group, and they are teaching elementary school children in China how to use 3D printing. They are selling 400,000 units to schools, teaching these children from a very basic level to how to use 3D printing in manufacturing. Thank you. So you have this is my audience, right? I have industry leaders who are doing this, and sellers and consumers. Hopefully you get them to think twice about stealing, theft. And a lot of the theft is, I take a Disney design of a figurine like Star Wars, and then I make it my own, and I change, I'm actually stealing design, right? And then you're broadcasting how to make a weapon all over the internet, and being able to do it. Let's see, the unwitting autobiographies, my group, my audience doesn't know that I'm doing this, right, except the local guy that I'm going to talk to. You all have heard of Etsy, probably. It's the hugest craft and, hugest, is that a word? The largest craft and antique online seller. Well, Jared Tarbell is the co-owner of that, and he and his wife moved back to Albuquerque, where his hometown, and he opened Levitated Toy Factory. And it's really not a toy store as much as it is a software building. And they are designing these things with 3D printers and laser printers. And they want to transform Albuquerque's business area too. So I'm anxious to talk to him and get some data for that. So that's where it's going next. That's a robo-arm built by 3D printing. Wow. So what are my risks? Okay, I may offend the ones that I quote and look into their data, and they may not listen. They may write it off as needless trepidation. One person wrote in their book, that it's just academia with too much time, and I was like, ouch, okay. But it's not that. There are real concerns. So I'm hoping that they'll think of the consequences and take to heart the privilege comes with responsibility, right? You have responsibility to your community, to your coworkers, to the security, national security, and consumers of all ages. My limitations are that some are talking and engaging in this, and they're bringing eloquent discussions to the table. Others are going to claim that I'm whistleblowing on an emerging new technology, and I should just hush, right? There's limited concern, and you see it in the books. Lavoisier talks about technical ethics. People can and do build weapons already, and he used the Boston Terror pop as an example, right? So there's little moral reason to be worried about this technology, he says. But then he concedes that the intellectual property theft is a concern. So they're seeing it, starting to talk about it. The personal interest is, like I said, I'm a techie. I've been doing IT work for about 25 years, a lot of it in program management to build new things. So I'm interested in the technology. I want to see it grow good, interesting and best practices. But I don't want to see it just go rampant. And I'm just hoping that people will take a moral stand. So this research seeks to expose potential legal and ethical 3D printing issues, define the standards to ensure a balanced approach, expose social and economic and moral issues that are not addressed. The example I thought about is the internet, the growth of the internet. When it first came out, people fought for their freedom. They didn't want to be taxed, didn't want to be regulated. But now we look at the things we fight: cyberbullying, right? Attacks, identity theft. So this is just in its opening stages. It's beginning an opportunity, right? So you have the opportunity to exponentially grow, which also needs safe boundaries, and you need to do more good than harm. And then you have the biblical standard for industry leaders, which is not just about yourself. Thank you.